Recording. Get comfy. We'll do a little crisscross. Ready?
Yeah, you start.
Okay. Welcome back. Bro, you know we're
teacher on this episode, right?
yeah, we're interviewing a teacher. Okay.
All right.
Bismillah alaik. Welcome back to Can We Take a Moment podcast. Today we're interviewing Wordman. He's a former teacher of mine and an educator in Dearborn. And we're going to take a bit more of a serious tone.
Something you guys should know is, as much as this is our show,
Mm-hmm.
it is the guest show as much, if not even more.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the guest, we will kind of change the rating.
Adapt, improvise,
We will
overcome.
kind of improvise the way we talk. Like, you can't sit in front of a teacher and be like, حاجة تتمنيك معي ولا.
As much as, look, Wordman's a cool guy. We totally could have that conversation with him. He also has a job. And what we kind of want to do is establish from here, episode 2, that regardless of who you are or who we're interviewing, who we're sitting across the table from, they are respected and their opinions are voiced. And this show is about us having a conversation, taking a moment, reflecting.
So I guess enjoy the episode.
I think you guys will like it. Okay, this is it.
Was it?
Welcome to episode 2 of the Can We Take a Moment podcast. My name's Abdullah.
My name is Muhammad.
And I'm Wordman.
Yeah, we got a special guest today, Wordman. As you can tell, he's wearing sunglasses today. He's a man who needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. Wordman has been an educator for how many years?
This will be 15 years.
Yeah, Wordman is a superhero in my eyes, the way I see it. But like not like your average superhero, not like Superman. Kind of like, what was that guy's name with the 4 rings?
Thanos.
I mean, how
No,
far
this
back
is-
you going?
I'm gonna
Back
date,
in the days?
Yeah, I'm going to date myself a little here.
Is this Captain Planet?
Captain Planet. You got it.
Captain Planet?
This is how I see Wordman. Is like Captain Planet had a child with like Deadpool because he cusses sometimes, but like only behind closed doors. So tell us about yourself. Tell us what you're here for. Tell us what you're here to talk about.
Well, first thing is, I just watched your first episode. And the reason I'm here and want to be here is because actually of something that came up when you guys were talking. You were sort of defining what the vision and mission is going to be. And Abdullah, you asked Mo, what is it that you want to do? And Mo said, I want to entertain, among other things. And I was very glad you said entertain and not amuse. Because amusing is very different than entertainment. Entertainment seeks enrichment. Entertainment is a fun way to learn, whereas amusement is a mode of distraction. And I really felt from that first episode that you are not aligned toward distraction. You see something of value that you want to share and you want to connect with the community. And that's why I was like, all right, this is something I really like and I want to see. Mo, I never had the privilege of being your teacher, Abdullah. I've been your teacher in school. And it's probably what brought us connecting.
I didn't learn
to this.
shit. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I liked this class, but I don't remember it. I remember Tupac. That's about it.
You remember Tupac? Okay.
Very
There
vividly.
was some Tupac, yeah.
Yeah, there was.
There's always Tupac in my class somewhere.
Yeah.
Tell
was
me
a good
about
time.
schooling. Where were you guys, where'd you go to school?
Fortune.
Oh, you went to
for high
Fortune,
school,
okay.
yeah. After that, didn't really do anything.
Well,
But
Pretty
dude,
much.
what's your perspective on college?
It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone.
Okay.
Doctor, all right. Lawyer, all right. Everything else, you're wasting your time.
So if I told you I'm
That's my
majoring in
hot take.
gender studies,
Gender studies?
yeah, like if I was majoring in gender studies at UCLA,
Change the topic. I'm not even going to get into that.
valid. All right, yeah, valid. I'm a college student right now. I went to U of M Dearborn for a year. I dropped out. Tried to go back for another semester. Dropped out. But the second time that I dropped out, I didn't fill out the right forms.
Mm-hmm.
So like apparently I failed 3 classes. So now I'm at HFC finishing up my prerequisites.
okay, okay.
And I've noticed that there's that cycle at HFC
Okay.
where
Tell
once
me
you're
about it.
in, you're stuck.
How's it work? What do you mean by that?
You
Walk me
take one
through it.
class at HFC and you're like, I'm going to be an engineer. I'm pre-engineering. I'm going to be an engineer. You take a class and then you finish that class. And then you start another and another and another and another. And then before you know it, you have 72 credits and you haven't transferred to Wayne State like you said you were. You've dropped out 4 times and your life sucks. And so, Mr. A, I want your opinion as to who is school for?
See, it's funny. What you just said is really interesting. I would say that of my students, most of them either know for sure what they want to do, but have no idea why. I mean, I'm going to be this. Okay, why? Tell me about it. What does that mean? What does that entail? They don't know, or they have no idea what they want to do. They're just in school, going day by day. Somebody told them this was a good idea. Somebody told them this is the right path, and they're following it. But where are they going is not clear. They don't have a purpose towards school.
Gotcha.
And I'm starting to realize a lot of students feel disenfranchised from the schools and what we call the education program. And the reason I say the so-called education program is because schooling and education are different things. Sometimes they come together, but sometimes they don't. And I'm starting to feel like young people feel like school is not serving their education. Education being self-knowledge. The purpose of learning is to learn about yourself. It's to grow as a person. It's to decide what you want and pursue those things so that you can have an enriching life. A lot of young people, I think, are feeling like school's not doing that for them. And I've seen it increasing over the years. I remember a time when I felt like kids were a little more invested in school. That started to decrease. Post 2020, I think a lot of students have checked out. And when I say a lot, I'm not talking about the usual ones who we consider at risk, right, or potential dropouts or whatever. The intelligent, the academically capable, the successful, the good kids, the A kids are starting to become disenfranchised. But why is not clear. I can't for sure say why. I can just say it's becoming a lot harder to get kids to buy into school anymore.
Do you have any theories?
One of the things is if school is supposed to enrich us and it's not doing that, kids are going to check out. That's one thing. I think the other thing on a broader scale is that there was always an element of school that was different from education. School was trying to basically control, in some sense, what you learn, where enrichment doesn't work that way. You learn at a different pace, you learn at a different time, you learn different things. You're organized by interests rather than by age or grade or gender or whatever it is. And you're pursuing a question you have, not a question somebody told you to. When kids ask the question, why do we have to learn this? It is incumbent upon us to answer that question. We're responsible for answering that question because they need to know. If they don't know how this is enriching them and we don't have a good answer, they will start to go away. They'll start to lose interest. The third part, I think, is, for the most part, we are not doing our job as well as we used to. And by we, I mean parents are not doing their jobs as well as they used to. Students are not doing their jobs as well as they used to. Teachers are not doing it. Administrators are not doing it. Politicians are not doing it. Siblings are not doing it. Friends are not doing it. We are not seeing the goal as one big investment in a greater goal. And that's why a lot of us get left behind. That's why a lot of us feel like we're lacking in so many different areas, because everybody's slacking. I think nowadays everybody's slacking.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that's probably, talking through it. If I had to come down to it, I'd say we could all be doing a better job across the board. Kids could show up with a pencil, for God's sake. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. I mean, I got one, but
I remember that. I literally used to show up without anything.
yeah.
Without anything. No pencil. It literally started downgrading throughout the years. Like freshman year,
Yeah.
full backpack, all the school supplies, everything.
You remember 5-star?
5-star, yeah.
The notebooks?
Yeah.
Notebooks,
Like $15
everything.
notebooks. I swear.
I remember sophomore year, it went to a string backpack. You know those gym bags?
Yeah, the gym bag.
Junior year, it went to a single binder.
Yeah.
Single binder. Senior year is when I just
Well, I mean,
nothing.
To be fair,
Literally nothing.
our senior year was COVID year.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we had until March.
Yeah, but come on, man. Like senioritis, like on top of COVID, on top of like all that stuff mixed together. How many absences do you think you had senior year?
How many days are in a school year?
Okay,
There's
valid.
180 absences.
180.
I
Times
had-
6 or whatever it is.
I had over 200 absences my senior year.
Really?
I did, yeah.
How? Oh well.
Well,
yeah,
per
sections.
class,
Per class.
per class, you get an absence on your final report card.
Yeah.
So like, I had over 200 of them.
I remember in one semester I had like 140 to 160, somewhere around that, in one semester.
So I mean, the question goes to you guys. Where did you lose? Where'd you go from that freshman year where you were invested to pretty much showing up without any investment at all? What's the story? Did you ever love school? Let me start there. Did you ever love
Yeah.
school?
Yeah.
I
I
definitely
always
did.
loved school.
Yeah.
I always did love school. I just never found that it was giving me the value that I needed. I never really blamed it on school. I just kind of blamed it on just my interests. Kind of, I just wasn't, I don't know. I just was not interested in going to learn something that was just off a textbook.
Mm-hmm.
Just bullet point after bullet point after bullet point, and it was just, it didn't seem important enough to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like the biggest thing I got from school was like the social learning. Like learning how to treat people and learning how to have friends and like hold a conversation.
That is the part, yeah. That is the
Yeah.
part where I say, like, I enjoyed it and I was invested in it,
Mm-hmm.
but like I would find myself skipping, but then staying in the school.
Oh, I
Yeah.
get it.
Literally.
Interesting. So the social aspect of school always kept you there.
Right.
Oh yeah. And I think if
Okay.
college even was set up the same way a high school classroom is, like having all your classes back to back to back to back to back, I think that could be beneficial for a freshman in college
Yeah.
to kind of ease their way into professors that care less than high school students do and that kind of thing.
You know, so hearing that, I'll tell you, school did a very good job of interfering with and potentially breaking that which you were motivated by. For example, when we see kids getting along, oftentimes it's because they're being too social. They're socializing. What do? We break them up.
Yeah.
We break up friend groups. We assign them to different classes. We remove them from the class. We punish them for talking. And what that does ultimately is that which was incentivizing you in the first place is removed. Now you have no reason to be there.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a collective way to make school more social and engaging, because that's the problem. The problem is kids were getting distracted from learning and distracting others. That's why the friends were broken. But I wonder if there's a way where we could actually bring them together where they are more socializing and learning at the same time. I've tried something in my class. So I'm not at Henry Ford College, but I'm at the early college. And at the early college, basically we're teaching, it's a very interesting school. I'll tell you more about it in a second. But the reason I brought it up is what I've been doing in my classroom is noticing post-COVID, reading and writing skills are decreasing, but speaking and listening skills are increasing because kids are doing much more of it. So the way children engage with language now, see, before then it was reading and writing, but now with the phones and the devices and experiences like this, kids are listening more. They're listening for longer periods of time. They are also speaking more, right? And they're seeing people speak. They're picking up on tone of voice. They're picking up on the main idea from someone's speech.
Mm-hmm.
So what I started doing was increasing speaking and listening in my class. So we started doing a lot more discussions and talking. The challenge I face sometimes is that that's still very awkward for them. They have a hard time loosening up. Once they do, it's great. But I think that started to motivate them to come to school. Because if I was still doing the old stuff, passing out papers, doing vocabulary words, reading and writing, it's just, I know they need that skill, but at the same time, speaking and listening are also parts of our standards. And if I can supplement reading and writing on one end, and then help them with the speaking and language, which is the one you guys use and the one you're most interested in, makes them more social, gets us talking more, brings out their personalities, and then once we're all comfortable, I started reintroducing reading and writing slowly. Now we read together, for example.
Yeah.
So like we sit in a circle, we pick something to read, we sit in a circle, everybody reads a piece, we go around. If you don't want to read, you pass.
And how old are these kids?
These are high schoolers,
Okay.
sophomores and juniors.
Okay.
Writing, we started reading their writing. So one week they write, the next week we put it together, read it together in the class. started to become more of a social situation. And I didn't do it intentionally, meaning I didn't do it consciously. But when I saw the results, I started saying, hey, I see something here. Something interesting is going on. You know, on the one hand, we'd say kids don't read anymore. I think if you count the captions and the comments, kids are reading more than they've ever read in their lives. And complex things, discussions, discussion boards, text, right? You get on the TCD page, say what you want about it. There's dialogue, and there's honest dialogue, sometimes too honest, but it's happening, right? People are talking to each other. We are not as detached and disengaged as we might think. It's just the mode of communication is shifting.
I'll tell you something. TCD and social media in general was introduced while we were in school. I think we picked up on it, I don't know, beginning, maybe tail end of middle school, beginning of high school kind of times. And some of us used it to I don't know if I should talk about this. I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
And I want to hear about the life of Beidun too. But if you remember Superintendent Maleko,
Yes.
who was the superintendent of Dearborn Public Schools,
Mm-hmm.
He had us going on a bus one time where, I shit you not, Mr. Al-Kamusi, and I'm sorry to call him out by name, but my tweet's out there. The tire was bald, man. The tire was bald on that on that bus.
Okay.
And I was mad that I was going to school, and the bald tires had nothing to do with it, but I wrote a very mean tweet.
Really? Were you on the bus?
On the bus,
Okay.
on the way to school. And I wrote this very mean tweet, and I was like, Superintendent, you need to... 2 days go by, I get a call. My dad calls me, he goes, why did I just get off the phone with your principal? And she's telling me that the superintendent wants to meet with you tomorrow.
Were you a student?
I was a student.
Okay.
And I was pissed.
Yeah.
I was like heated at the moment. Not because of the bald tires. I just didn't want to go to school.
Sure.
If I'm being
Okay.
so real. But long story short, he flakes out on the meeting.
Okay.
He didn't want to face me face to face. He sent a letter saying, hey, the buses were safe. You just didn't want to go to school. And then I, as a student who was overachieving, got away with it because I was behind that phone screen. And so the question I kind of have to you and why I'm telling this story is, what do you think the effect social media and, like you said, those captions, those comments, that faceless kind of post that we're able to have where we're overly honest, what effect do you think that has on students today?
See, we're overly honest because we are protected behind a screen. I would like to propose that if you post something like that, are you able to say that to a person's face? So if we could get those people in a room to read those posts and those tweets and those texts to one another, can they do it? And you'll find that people are far more empathetic than we might imagine. It's very interesting what happens when you can see in real time the reaction of the person you're talking to. Because of the way these apps are designed, we don't see that. We post the text and we don't really get to see what happens as a result. But I think in real life, yes, people get heated. Yes, people say things to each other. But it's a lot more tame because we're talking to each other in real life. And we have empathy, right? Empathy simply meaning that we can recognize that we're causing pain, or we can recognize that we're causing humiliation. We don't see that in the text. So I think whatever you wrote, if you had said that to Dr. Maleko's face, would you say that to him?
No, absolutely not.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
I was shitting bricks, man. I'm like
Yeah.
15, 16 years old. I'm like, man, I feel bad. I kind of said some mean things in there, but I was professional about it.
Yeah.
And despite being behind a phone screen, I realized that I'm still talking to a human being. And that's something that I think is lost because I had just had my phone for maybe a year at that point.
Right.
So I still understood that there was another person reading this. And I wish Dr. Maleko could see this so I could apologize.
Sure.
But the other thing is, like, being behind a phone, it also opens a lot of opportunity.
Yes.
And Beidun had this YouTube channel
Okay.
that I want to hear about.
It was a YouTube and mainly a Instagram page.
Okay.
It was called The Life of Beidun.
The Life of Beidun.
The Life of Beidun. I found that we were just doing, there's no other way to, crazy shit.
Okay.
Throughout high school, throughout after school, in school, everything. And I just decided, let's just post it.
Yeah.
And then it kind of started gaining traction. It was it was kind of the era of the spam pages, they used to call them,
Mhm.
where like you would have your main page on Instagram, and then you would have your
Oh, okay.
and then you
Yeah,
would
yeah.
have your page where like you would post stuff you wouldn't really post on your main page.
Oh, okay.
And still to this
I don't
day,
get it either. Oh, it's okay.
still to this day, I'm proud to say that I was the highest followed spam page in Dearborn.
No kidding. Were you really?
Yeah,
Can you give some numbers?
I don't remember.
Do you remember?
I know
Off
it.
the top, and not. I don't need.
I know it. A few hundred, I believe, 400 to 500, and then.
And these are like intimate like people.
Right.
Like at
Oh,
your school.
okay.
Like
Oh,
I
yeah,
still
yeah.
remember like. It got to people that don't really know me personally, and
Hmm.
throughout high school, I still remember there was a few times where I was walking, and then someone would just yell out the life of Beydoun.
Wow.
And then I would look around, and then I see the person that said that. I'm like, bro, who are you? Like, who are you? Because it started off as literally just a joke.
Yeah.
And then it grew into something that was like, okay, people are actually like following this and actually looking at this.
Yeah.
Dude, I wish we had more of that in high school. Like just more social interaction that was like positive,
Hmm.
even on a phone. Like just I don't know. It's a way to connect at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's just a mode of communication.
Yeah.
It has its pros and cons like any other one.
Mhm.
Reading is a mode of communication that has pros and cons. Writing is a mode of communication that has pros and cons. I think the only thing that happened is unexpectedly, the level of connectivity skyrocketed very, very quickly, and we just weren't anticipating it, and more than it's ever happened before. So that Beydoun can post something, and a total stranger knows who he is, saw all of it, who knows how it got to him. If there's one thing I've realized, is you really cannot predict the degree of reach that you can make nowadays.
Right.
Between WhatsApp shares, between screen recordings, between posting and sharing and resharing, you have no idea, and it's increasing. It's certainly increasing. The content's increasing, but the reach and the connectivity is increasing just the same.
Right. I know I had a couple years ago in the winter, you know how you throw boiling hot water into the. So I was walking
Was that one of the
up-
challenges or something?
Right.
Yeah.
So then I filled up a pan, and I walked to my porch. I threw it off the stairs, and what happened was is the handle of the pan stayed in my hand, but then the pan flew out towards the street,
Wow.
and it made a noise you like can't explain. It was just like literally like a cartoon noise. So then I posted on my Snapchat story, and someone slid up. They're like, "Man, you should post this on TikTok."
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, "Man, should I this that?" So I think I slept on it for a day.
Yeah.
And then I was like, "All right, why not?"
Yeah.
I post it, I think in like the evening.
Yeah.
I wake up the next day, it's at like 500,000 views.
God damn.
Wow.
And then it slowly started going up, and then about a week later, it exploded again. Another 300,000 views. I think right now it's sitting at 1.3, 1.4 million views.
Incredible.
And
A
it was
pan
just
flying in the air.
Incredible.
just I feel like it's the noise.
Mm.
And I would go through like comments, I would go through reactions
Yeah.
on TikTok, and I know this guy specifically, he has such a funny laugh.
Mm.
Some total stranger from a different state, different country, just reacting to me on a video and just dying laughing. And I find that so like, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird that someone somewhere so far can be laughing that hard at something that you did.
You were watching a reaction video to your video from
To
someone
my
in a
video.
different part of the world?
Different part of the
That's
world.
crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And it was a fail, by the way. It wasn't even what you were trying to do.
Right. It just, I feel like the noise that it made had people watching it over. I mean, I watched that video probably like every time I pull it up, I have to watch it 4, 5, 6 times in a
Yeah.
row.
Yeah.
It's just that noise that it makes. I
I've
feel
never
like
seen this video.
You have
I've never
not
seen
it?
I'll probably throw it in the video.
You have to throw it in
Yeah.
there.
I'll check it out. It's awesome. Why do you do those things?
I like to kind of save the moment.
Okay.
But I hate recording too much, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I love that in between stage where I notice that I'm doing something, but then I try to just capture it, and then I put my phone away.
Bro, we're on a podcast. It's like an hour and a half long video.
That's the thing. But I'm talking about, like, remember when, let me take my mic out. You remember when we went on that fishing trip at like, I think like 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
You know how we took like, we would pause, like take a video. To this day, I still find myself like pulling up those videos and watching them.
Oh, really?
Mr. Ray, you ever been fishing?
I've been fishing.
Okay. You ever been fishing at 6 in the morning?
No.
Okay.
I haven't been fishing.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'd been fishing maybe twice before this.
Okay.
And Beydoun's like a big fisher. He has like a boat and everything. Her name's
Oh,
Tiffany.
okay.
Like it's the whole like 9 yards.
Wow.
Beydoun calls me at like, what was it, 3 in the morning? No, we were out.
We were out.
We were playing Monopoly at like 3 or
Right.
4 in the morning.
Yeah.
He looks at me. He goes, "Bro, we should go fishing." And I'm like, "Yeah, let's follow good night."
Yeah.
Like whatever. He's like, "No, I'm serious. Let's go fishing."
Yeah.
And we did, and it turned into this thing of like these random escapades and capturing these little moments throughout like bad ideas that came out of like a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of turned into like the highlight of our lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And having so much structure, kind of coming back to what school is, it's like I can remember times when I was at school when like, you know, the fights or the clubs or the events that happen, and I can kind of picture those moments, but I don't remember being in school for 8 hours a day.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
What are the moments you remember?
I don't know. Pick a year. You got to be more specific.
It's so
than that.
interesting. Yeah, you remember them as eras.
Yeah, it's
and you
like,
have highlights of those eras.
exactly.
Highlights
so
is,
cool.
I think, that kind of like the perfect word to use for that.
Highlights.
It's kind of what I was trying to do with the page and we're trying to do with everything. It's just highlights.
Yeah. Highlights of life.
Right.
Nice.
The life of
Okay.
Beydoun.
Life of Beydoun. Yeah, makes sense. Well,
So,
so what happened then, Beydoun?
I don't know. I just kind of grew out of it. High
Uh-huh.
school, kind of graduated high school, and then I was like, okay, like, it's hard to kind of, because I feel like when you graduate high school, you kind of shift over to your personal life a little more, and then it was just difficult to kind of capture. We were doing less, kind of. We were doing less, and there was just less to post, and then.
Why do you guys think that is, though? Why do you think that our personal life... Because I think you probably also have this experience. Because I definitely feel the same way. It's like as soon as I graduated high school, I feel like there's a new era that started in my life where things became more serious. And like, why does that happen?
Shakespeare says there's 7 eras. You live multiple lifetimes within one life, and they each have a beginning and an end, and you go through eras. And I don't want to get into the specifics of what he says, but the short of it is that what happens is that life is sort of like, you know how a video game is designed? And in a video game, you have levels, and you got to achieve one level over another. So you got to finish a stage of life in order to get to the next one, and then you go on. Now, let's say you die in that level or you fail. You wake up the next day, you got to start from the beginning and do it again, you know? So he describes the seven layers of life as, starts with the line, all the world's a stage. So we're all actually performing in a level in which we're in. And the idea is that the more you learn about yourself, the more you get what your role is in the bigger story. And that's why self-knowledge is so important. That's why education is supposed to give us self-knowledge before it sends us out into the world. You're supposed to leave school knowing what you're good at. You're supposed to leave school knowing what your talents are. You're supposed to leave school knowing who your friends are and who not your friends are, your enemies or your adversaries or whatever they are. You're supposed to leave with experience. You're supposed to have made all the mistakes you're supposed to make, get them out of the way, so that when you go into life, you have experience. Experience is learning from failure. Real failure, right? Like real failure, not somebody's opinion of your essay. The problem is by the time kids get to 18, they haven't made enough mistakes or learned from them. You know, they haven't socialized enough to learn where they are. They haven't tried enough things, right? It's not just reading and math. They haven't tried cooking. They haven't tried sewing. They haven't tried construction. They haven't tried policing. They haven't tried acting, right? There isn't enough experience for them to know what they're good at. So they end up walking out thinking these are your options, right? There's 3, law, medicine, or not, you know? And so they go out into this world. They're not prepared for the challenges that they're about to face because they don't know who they are, right? Then they go in, they take on these enormous responsibilities, right? They go to college, they take on a degree. You're somebody's doctor now. You're somebody's father or mother now, right? Unprepared. They have to learn the hard way. And I see also a situation in which parents realize at certain points in their life, usually the midlife, right? If we're talking about stages of life, one of the stages of life is we call it the midlife crisis. It dawns on you that you are reaching the apex of your life. And so it's a curve, right? You're getting to this point where you had everything and now you got to start giving it back. And so there's this moment of fleeting fear of like, well, did I use it? What if I let it all go? What if I lose it all? And you start panicking. What happens in the midlife is parents, some parents, of course, make the mistake of going, well, I can't fix it, but I can fix it for my kid. Then they fall into this trap where they start living vicariously through their children. They want the children to achieve the dreams they had for themselves. Dangerous trap, you know? And the reason that happens, I think, is that if parents knew more about themselves before they became parents, if as young people they had education, self-knowledge, knowledge and awareness of self, by the time they get to raising someone, they understand the simplest thing about parenting. Your only job is to help them figure out who they are. You shouldn't do anything for them. You shouldn't tell them what to do. You don't have to give them beliefs. They're going to discover their beliefs through trial and error. And yeah, some of those beliefs might be what you have and they might be not what you have. Your kids might have different beliefs than you in certain regards. That's not personal. That's not your fault. You didn't fail if they didn't come out exactly the way you envisioned them the moment they were born. Then let's go back to the kids. Now you got the kids under the pressure to not get the disapproval of their parents. So now you have another dynamic. Now the kids don't want to disappoint their parents. But because they're not achieving what the parents envisioned, because they're not that person, they're not their parent 30 years ago, they're themselves, they're somebody else in a different era, in a different generation. Unfortunately, kids carry a lot of shame and guilt, right? One of the biggest fears in school is simply the disappointment of their parents. I think that's the number one fear for kids in school, is that report card day just not being exactly what their parents want. So they'll do anything not to hurt their parents. They'll cheat. They'll change things on the tests. They'll have somebody else do their homework. And ultimately, they'll quit. They'll quit on themselves in order to serve the dream of their parents. This is a trap for everybody. It stinks, you know. Kids care about their grades, I think, for no other reason than they want their parents to be happy. I don't think kids give a damn about grades. Nor should they, right? Grades are not a measure of your intelligence. They're not a measure of your success as a person. They're not a measure of your quality of being, right? They are actually arbitrary measures set by each individual teacher to measure progress. Grades are for the teachers, ultimately. Ultimately, they're for us to figure out how you're doing and to scale it such that we can provide support where you're lacking. It's not a measure of your quality as a human being. I think young people need to know that, and parents need to know that. Your kid is if your kid has a C, that doesn't mean anything about the kid. It means they're struggling in that certain subject with that certain teacher at this certain time in their life, right? Maybe they learn math a year later. Maybe they learn math a year earlier. We don't know, you know? The day math clicked for me, I was in my 30s. Math made no sense, and then I discovered something. Mathematics is a language. It's a language. It's like a math problem is actually a sentence. It's a sentence. And I started to read math. And when I started to read math, those X's and Y's became fill in the blanks. I started to be able to do it in my head. Had somebody told me that in second grade? Had somebody said to me, this is a language, this is a sentence, read it, what goes there? And I went, 3 goes there, obviously, right? I would have done a lot better in math. But unfortunately, I didn't understand why we were doing it. I didn't understand how this translated into something meaningful. And so somewhere around the end of middle school, I gave up on math. I internalized the belief that I was dumb at math, right? And I'm not. If I'm applying mathematics to music, I understand it very well, right? If I'm applying mathematics to geometry, totally makes sense.
Wait. Math to music? What do you mean by that?
Well, music is very mathematical. Music is highly mathematical. The harmony, the scales, the sounds, the intervals of sound, right, are very mathematical. There's all sorts of fractions in music. There's all sorts of patterns, repetitive patterns, and those patterns create harmony. See, what is harmonic music? Harmony is when you have an equation that is balanced within the different sounds that are coming through, right? Don't mind me if I talk a little bit about music. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
So I always recommend if you want an introduction to music, begin with Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. Bach really nerded out on this. He said to himself at some point while studying music, I want to come up with a playbook for what sounds good. I want to prove mathematically the beauty of sound. And so he started just experimenting. And what we have is an enormous body of work of him deciding as specifically as possible what sounds good. He is probably the father of Western harmony. There's a collection of pieces called the Fugues, night music, pretty much. It's four people playing the same instrument, playing four different songs on the same instrument at the same time. So let's say fugues and violin. Four violinists. Each one is playing a different song at the same time, right? Starting off at different points, and then at the end, they all come together into kind of one harmonic beat, right? Mm-hmm. It's amazing because you can hear all four completely different songs playing completely different notes at different times, starting off at different places, and still it all sounds good. Like, that's math. That's not random. You know, he figured out all of the different ways to make that work. So almost trains you to learn what's good, because what's good is harmonic, it's melodic, it's systematic. Mm-hmm. Bach is perfect for order. You have a long day at work, come home, just play Bach. It's a reset. Squares everything for you.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to hear about like how Wordman. So you have two perspectives here. Like, I was a student of yours way back when.
Yeah.
And I've kind of kept up with what you've been up to, the books, the transition into Wordman, seeing some of your performances, Dearborn Open Mic, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then you have Beydoun, who has no idea who you are.
Okay, sure.
Whatsoever.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious to know what you'd say to someone who doesn't know who Wordman is. How would you explain it? And also, what would you say to someone who's kind of been following you along all the way? What's coming up next for you?
Absolutely. Let me begin just with a short introduction. So, my name is Yusuf Al-Qamusi. Mm-hmm. My first name, Yusuf, comes from my mother's side of the family. My mother is from Lebanon, South Lebanon, and her father's name was Yusuf. So I was named after him. My last name, Al-Qamusi, comes from my dad's side of the family. My father is originally from Iraq. He descends from Najaf. And his name means, in Arabic, Al-Qamusi. Qamus in Arabic means dictionary. So my last name means man who is the dictionary, or he who knows all words. And apparently this was a laqab, or a title, or a nickname that was given to one of my ancestors who was studying. He was a poet, a writer, and a student of knowledge in the seminary in Najaf. And apparently he was so linguistically gifted that they started to call him the word man. Hey, that's the guy who knows all the words, right? That's word guy. And then they called his son. هذا ابن القاموسي.
You think they're proud of you now?
They're looking down. I hope so.
Or looking up. You never know.
Looking up. I don't know. Wherever they are, they're looking. I hope. And they're not proud of me yet. No, I have work to do. I'm just getting started. But okay. So that name went on, and I descend from a family of wordmen, mm-hmm. poets, booksellers, authors, and scholars, specifically literary and some religious scholars. Essentially, the reason I picked up that name was that somewhere in 2020, I realized a change needed to happen. But building up to it, my whole life was surrounded by words. My mother was a Quran teacher. She taught memorization of Quran to young kids. And I started with recitation, ultimately, tajweed. So recitation of the Quran is something I was doing ever since I was very, very young. And memorization, I'm not a hafiz. I don't have the whole Quran memorized, but a substantial portion of it. So I was reciting. Music was not allowed in my upbringing. It was considered haram, or at least avoided. We would listen to like nasheed, Islamic songs, or Quran, of course. But I was always fascinated by music, especially in middle school and high school, and particularly gangster rap. I just thought it was brilliant. I was very, very impressed with what they could do linguistically and socially. And I was growing up in the 90s. I mean, this was the golden age of rap. Mm-hmm. I started listening to music, and I was very drawn in. And somewhere around 8th grade, I felt like it was something I wanted to do. So I started rapping under a rap name, Anonymous. I was rapping under Anonymous. By rapping, I mean...
your rap name was Anonymous?
Yeah, Anonymous was my rap name. Yeah. And whatever. It was garage stuff. I did some songs and so on. But going from Quran to gangster rap was quite a dynamic shift. I started to pick up the gangster rap attitude, and I wasn't a very good kid in ninth grade. I think I had a 2.7 coming out of Woodworth as a student. And they actually demoted me in the academic class. So they put me in, I had been in honors math, for example. Now I was retaking that. And suddenly I ended up with a group of students who, for the most part, many of them didn't graduate. They didn't give me the message right away that, listen, we think you're dumb. So, but I got the message over time. The teachers, though, were incredible. My ninth grade teacher was incredible. We were reading Romeo and Juliet. All right. And he passed it out. And I was, of course, a punk at the time. And I said, poetry sucks. This is in front of the class. And he goes, really? I go, yeah, it's stupid. It's just a bunch of people. It doesn't even make sense. What are we talking about? We shouldn't even be reading this. We should be studying Tupac. And he said, Tupac? I said, yeah. I said, okay. So we passed it out. He went through the lesson. Next day, he comes in with a boombox, one of those, stereos, with a Tupac CD. I'm jumping up and down. I'm ecstatic. He prints out copies, passes them out. Tupac lyrics. We were listening to Dear Mama by Tupac. And he passed it out, and then basically we went through the song, listened to it. I rapped to it a couple of times, and then he went on the board and he wrote a line from the song, and he said, and even as a crack fiend, mama, you always was a black queen, mama. I finally understand for a woman it ain't easy trying to raise a man. Wrote that on the board. He said, what do you think it means to be a black queen? And we all started saying this and that, right? I think it means this, or maybe it means she means respect, or maybe he means deeper meaning. And he said, black queen can mean several things. One is that she's a beautiful black woman, right? Another is that she's the queen of the family. And then he dropped this piece of knowledge. He said, black queen could also be a reference to what they called crack mothers in the 70s. Because his mother, Tupac's mother, grew up during the crack epidemic, right? And then he wrote the word on the board, pun, P-U-N. He said, this is when one word can mean multiple things at the same time. By the end of that lesson, he had gone through everything we were supposed to learn in Shakespeare with Tupac. I went home, started listening to Tupac. I could not believe my ears. It's full of what he taught us, figurative language. I was obsessed, right? Before I knew it, I was shifting from writing gangster rap to writing poetry and reading poetry. I remember picking up Hamlet from the library and reading Hamlet for the first time, blown away. And eventually what I realized, then I loved English. I loved school. Grades went up. And by senior year, I was graduating AP Lang as a top student, top 50 students in my class. That was because one teacher made one decision to teach one lesson other than what was scripted because he saw potential in me as a student. I said, I want to do this for as many people as I can. And I had a real knack and still have a real knack for what they call the at-risk kids. Because deep down inside, I'm a bad boy just like them. I grew up just like them. Kept teaching. You guys know I had the Mr. A show. You remember the Mr. A show?
I do. Yeah.
So Mr. A show was ultimately, again, it was inspired by kids who weren't listening to me. So this was when the Promethean boards were first coming out.
Yeah.
So Promethean boards are coming out. They have these screens, but we're still using them like boards. It's like just a digital board now. So I was trying to teach on this, and then we started introducing videos into the classroom. So we'd play videos. So here's the thing. I'd play a 5-minute video on YouTube. Kids are silent, engaged. Then I turn it off. I want to have a discussion. They're rambunctious. They don't listen. They're talking to each other. They're being silly. To the point that I started to get to my ego. Like I was like, why won't they listen to me the way they listen to these videos? It's like, this doesn't make any sense. I bet if I was on the screen, they'd probably listen to me. And then it hit me like, yeah, if you were on the screen, they would. So I recorded the first Mr. A video. I went home. I put together like just some slides. It was an app called 30 Hands. And it was just basically you put slides and a voiceover. So I went home. It was the next day. I was teaching figurative language, which is the same lesson pretty much that I learned in ninth grade in my ninth grade English classroom. So I put together the lesson. I took all the slides, put a voiceover, and played it over the TV. Not only did the kids listen the whole time, they passed the quiz afterwards, and my least engaged students the day before were the most engaged students that day. So I just started putting that on my as my lessons. I just created a show. Twice a week they'd come in. My lesson would be a lecture on YouTube. They'd sit down and listen to it, and they would learn.
Wow.
So that was pretty much my career then. Then the pandemic hit, and that's when Wordman was born, during the pandemic. But that I can talk more about that.
Yeah.
Basically, Wordman itself.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Like, I'm hearing like the Mr. Al-Kamusi origin story, not so much the Wordman origin story.
Yeah. So all of that builds up to what Wordman is and became.
Okay.
I think what I started to realize during the pandemic is we went home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we went home, we still had to teach these kids virtually and digitally. Yet once again, we're trying to do it the way it's done in the classroom. There has not been real innovation at all. And I just couldn't understand why. Like, why are we not innovating? Why are we not understanding that this situation may have worked for us in the 60s and 70s and 80s? And maybe it works for some students. What about the rest of these kids? Why are my students 80, 90% of them, muted on Zoom? Like, why? Why am I not able to engage them? What's missing, right? Kids lost a year of education. Kids are still suffering from the effects of the pandemic, We haven't even started to cope with that problem. But what did we do? As soon as it was over, we went right back to the same script. 5 days a week, 1 hour a day, same subject every day, same kids in the same room, silent. Now they're on screens in the room. We've done nothing. We didn't take that opportunity to innovate. We wanted to come back and fix it. And that was really, for me, a last straw, because I realized it's not going to change. We're going to keep failing the kids who are falling behind. And here's the irony. The kids who are falling behind are the ones who can do something else. They're actually the smart kids, the successful kids, the A kids who are dropping out and becoming so disenfranchised, saying, I can do this somewhere else with someone else. Why are we losing them? So what Wordman basically became is, it's based on my name, but what it really is an innovative, imaginative approach to education. And it's focused on creative expression. So ultimately what I realized is when kids can express themselves authentically in a safe environment, they thrive no matter what they're doing. No matter what they're doing, they thrive. So I started to move toward more creative work, reading their writing. The other day I passed out an assignment to some of my students, and they started writing, and midway I just said this out loud. I said, by the way, somebody might read this. And they went into a frenzy. A, nobody ever reads their work other than their English teacher to criticize it, right? B, now they really got to think, because what do they care about? They care about the judgment of their peers. That's what they're concerned with. What do my friends think? Not my teacher. Maybe even not my parents to some extent. As long as my parents are at bay, you know what I mean? I can really live my life. But my peers, what if they read this? What if they think something about me? Now it's serious. Their writing immediately improved. They started taking it more seriously. They had more to say, At first they had nothing to say. But then they realized, no, I can actually do this. Now they have more to say. And the quality of their writing slowly started to improve. And now we have a classroom where we read all the time, but we read student literature. We read things the students are creating, and rather than something arbitrary that doesn't connect with them. So ultimately, the model of Wordman is bringing people together for imaginative, creative expression in a safe environment. And if you remember my class, I was always gamifying. I think why I brought up Mr. Al-Kamusi and Mr. Aisho is that the innovation never stopped. I was always looking for a way to keep the at-risk kids, we call them at-risk kids. Honestly, most of them are geniuses. You know what I mean? They just don't fit in the mold just the way they should. And rather than accommodating them or even allowing some space for them to fit in, we just sort of say, well, then you're broken. Pretty much. So ultimately, bringing people together to share ideas in a creative, imaginative form. And here's what's changing. I was doing this in my classroom. And I realized the demand for this is a lot bigger than the classroom. Mm-hmm. Any one of you guys want to get together with 5, 10 of your friends and have a 1-hour lesson with a professional where you're expressing yourself and having fun. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be like school at all. It would be getting together, we buy some food, we sit down all together. I come in, we pick a topic, you know what I mean? And I facilitate a learning experience on that topic, right? And then I leave. You guys continue to hang out and discuss what you just went through. So bringing the classroom to the mainstream, doing pop-ups at restaurants, at shows like the Dearborn Open Mic, where I was hosting kids for a year. I think the Dearborn Open Mic was awesome because it was a platform that gave students an opportunity, not just my students, everybody. Young people are like, whoa, I can come on stage, actually perform in front of a live audience, try something new, and it feels safe pretty much because somebody is there, and in that case, I'm there. And I'm making sure it's a safe, orderly environment where people feel respected, So I had a lot of fun with the Dearborn Open Mic. And I would love to see more of that, where young people can express themselves, I also did a show at Salina. Shout out to my sister Iman Ahmed, the principal there. She was wonderful, very accommodating. she allowed me to go in on Wednesdays. And what I did is basically I put 2 chairs and 2 mics and sat on stage. And people would come in and they could come on the stage and talk with me. So one young man showed up once. It was really literally just me and him in an empty auditorium. And we sat down and we talked about night thoughts. I was talking about the kind of things he thinks about at night. Incredible 10-minute conversation, just talking about night thoughts. Then another brother came in. Turns out he's an educator. We sat down, we talked, we became friends on stage. We were just chilling, you know. And I realized the live audience experience has tremendous value, and I love that. That's the other thing about Wordman is I want to also bring back live stage performances, live audiences, and to people who have different varieties of interests, you know. Currently, I'm working with some brothers. We're talking about a Ramadan program. We want to do a secular Ramadan program, right? Those who go to the mosque and have that experience get to experience the beauty and enrichment of Ramadan. But there are a lot of our young people who are disenfranchised from that system. For one reason or another, the mosque does not engage them. They are not connected. Kind of like in the classroom. It's just not the setting for them, or it's not the time for them. Where do they go? We want to create an alternative that is enriching, entertaining, not amusing. We're not there just to be silly. You can actually come in and learn something about yourself, about your faith, with people who are secular. And by secular, I mean it's going to be held in neutral locations, such as a warehouse, for example. It's going to be open to people who are Muslim and non-Muslim of every sect. Because it's not a mosque, ladies who don't wear hijab don't have to cover their hair to come in. Because it's not a mosque, we don't have to sit segregated by gender, right? So there's a lot more flexibility. But we bring the same themes and topics to young people, you know, and that's all in the works. But inshallah, those kinds of alternatives, right? Alternative education across the board, giving everybody a chance to learn, to participate, to be a part of something. Wordman is really just starting, but these are the kinds of aspirations I have going forward. And I'll say this to kind of end. Ultimately, I'm not looking to be the Wordman. I'm looking to be a Wordman. I do not want to serve the role of emperor. I want to serve the role of pioneer. I want to show people how to learn on their own so that all of us can start to do this for ourselves, inshallah, God willing, for our kids. This is about your kids. You guys, we have a whole new generation coming up. We're going on our 4th or 5th generation here in Dearborn. You know what I mean? What are we going to do? We're going to teach them the way we just learned? We're going to have the same failures that didn't suit you, Abdullah, or you, Mobeidun? Like, are we going to do that? Or are we going to start to adapt and realize why we can't make the same generational cycle of mistakes over and over again? So ultimately, I'm looking to find a way to bring people together, bridge gaps, and bring back imagination, bring back creative expression. That's the ultimate mission of Wordman.
I want
Powerful
to
stuff.
backtrack a little bit. I know you were talking about how you started doing things differently in your classroom. What do you see, kind of broadly, what else do you do differently that you don't like that other teachers do?
Okay, just so I make sure I understand the question. You're saying, what is it that I do differently that other teachers don't do?
Right, you brought up a couple points, but what is it mainly kind of, you see some small things in your classroom that you do that teachers are failing or stepping behind with?
Okay. I think the difference with me is not what I do, it's what I think. It's philosophical. I'm a student of Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire was a Brazilian educator. And he wrote a book called Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And what he talked about was basically the way the school model is set up is it's designed in such a way that it actually fails to do what it's supposed to do. He called it the banking concept, and I'll give you an example. The idea of a classroom is that you're supposed to show up to someone who is smarter than you, who has more knowledge than you, who is more qualified than you to teach you. You show up to their room, they take their knowledge from their head and they put it in your head. And to prove that you received it, you have to demonstrate through tests that they design that you understood their knowledge. Then you leave. That's a success. He said there's several problems with this, but the main one is that's not how real learning works. Real learning is an exchange. It's an exchange between teacher and student. You come to me, I'm going to teach you what I specialize in, then you're going to teach me what you specialize in. We're going to trade. The difference with me is when students come to my class, they are my teachers. I learn more from them about education and learning than I would from any professional development because they're the only ones who are directly experiencing what's going on. So many times I ask them a lot of questions. Many times they teach me things I wouldn't know about. And you'd be amazed what some of these kids know. I learn a lot from them. So fundamentally, the difference is that I want to exchange knowledge. I'm also a student of the Greeks. I really like the way the Greeks held school. So for them, what it was is school was basically a public place that was very beautiful, usually somewhere in nature if possible, if not a very beautiful building, open space. People who are teachers, who want to teach, basically go and hang out there. And young people show up and come to them and ask questions and discuss. All right? So, for example, Socrates. Socrates was a dude in town. He would show up, go to the park, sit in the park, and people come to him and talk to him. And over time, what happens is organically, those who have more value to give attract more students. And those who don't probably don't attract many. Eventually, they just get up and leave. No one's coming there. So what happened is Socrates would have a bunch of people come through. They're eating, right? And as they're sitting and eating, they're exchanging ideas. You know, his wisdom was not that he had knowledge to give. It was that he had a remarkable way of listening to his students and figuring out what they needed at that moment. Because all of it, if you read Socrates, right, all of his books or recordings are dialogues. They're conversations with people. The symposium is a room of people having dinner. And the things they talk about are incredible. Everybody has something to offer, you know? So all that being said, the first thing I try to do when I see a new student is I want to see what they're knowledgeable about and what they can offer me. Now they're of value to me. In exchange, I will give them the value that I have. I think most teachers, and I don't blame teachers, I really don't. I blame a system that continues to train us this way, and we're obedient. Like, teachers don't want to be bad. They want to be good too. They want to be good teachers and do their job as well. But what their job entails is, here's a curriculum that, by the way, they didn't design. It was given to them by the state. Here's the curriculum. You have to teach it this way with this chunks to this many students and show us these results at the end. It's literally impossible, right? I guarantee you if you removed all that and just let the teachers teach, you would see a lot more learning happening in those disciplines because they're actually experts. Your math teachers were experts, right? Your language arts teachers were experts. These guys knew their stuff. But the way the curriculum is designed, which has nothing to do with schools or superintendents or anybody, goes back all the way to the state, goes back to funding, and it goes back to politicians who want to move money around a certain way, right? And because money is circulating around a certain way, the brunt of it falls back on essentially lower and lower up to the teachers. So your teachers are wonderful, but the challenge they're facing is they really do not have the liberty to teach. I don't know what it is about me. For the most part, I do whatever I want. I don't do it to be defiant. I just really can't help it. I can't teach a curriculum that doesn't work. I can't force a child to do something against their will. I literally am incapable, and I'm willing to take the penalty if that's not what teachers want, what my administrators or my guardians want. But I did notice something. One of the reasons I am given a lot of leeway is I am responsible and respectful, but more importantly, kids are learning. Test results continue to show parents are happy, students are happy, real learning is happening. And that's why, look, I can't just do whatever I want, right? At the end of the day, I am within the guardrails. But the method in which I engage kids, rather than doing different things, I just do things differently.
Yeah.
Right? That's how I would say it. I don't do different things. I do things differently, and therefore kids respond differently.
You're forced to be more creative because of those guardrails.
Well, yeah, you got to be. And the guardrails are not bad. They're not bad. It's just, I think a little more flexibility for teachers within the guardrails would be wonderful. The teachers would be more motivated. That enthusiasm would translate into the kids. That would translate into creativity. Creativity is results. So more and more of that would benefit everybody.
The curriculum, do you think it is too easy or too hard, or is just not designed well at all?
That's a very good question. First of all, it depends on the subject, right? Language arts or English is very different than the other subjects because it's not necessarily a knowledge-based, it's a skills-based. Math, for example, you got to learn the math curriculum. You have to learn addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, algebra, geometry, and then pre-calculus, right? That's the way knowledge is organized. By the way, all of this stuff you have no idea how new and arbitrary this educational system is. This is called the Prussian model. It was designed in Europe around a couple hundred years ago by a bunch of elitists and elites. I think it was like 10 men in a room, or something like that, who just decided, here is how knowledge will be done, in order to create obedient soldiers. ultimately, in order to create obedient servants of the state. Is that what we want? Like, is there anything less American than obedient servants to the state? It's the last thing we want. We want free thinkers. We want rebels, right? I'll tell you this, studying literature, this is how I would summarize British literature. So English can be British literature or American literature or Canadian literature or Australian. It just depends, right? Here's the difference between British and American literature. British literature praises itself on upholding the tradition. American literature praises itself on dismantling the system and the literature and the rules and the tradition. We are iconoclasts. Our job is to break shit that's been put together. You know what I mean? We're not teaching our kids that spirit. Now, of course, you read something like the Declaration of Independence. Declaration of Independence starts with "when in the course of human events," which is the most gangsta bar in political literature. Like, basically, by the time it gets this bad, you guys are going to see some trouble. That's ultimately what he wrote that to the king, at a time when the entire world was ruled by monarchy. Think about this: the entire world was monarchical. There was a king in every country. And Thomas Jefferson and a few dudes, right, show up and say, actually, we can rule ourselves. Thank you. By the time we still got to answer to you guys, we can rule ourselves. That's the American spirit. Where is that in our education system? Right? Like, that's what I think is missing. Now, bring in creativity. Educate children to be creative. Now they can see other ways to do things. They can break the mold. They can praise themselves on upending the system, upending the tradition. The greatest literature in America is nothing but rule breaking. I mean, have you tried to read the Beats, right? Beat Generation, Jack Kerouac, or William S. Burroughs, or Ginsberg, right? These guys, their job was to take these standards that they learned at Columbia and Yale and Harvard and shatter them, and we hail them today. Whitman, Emerson, Thoreau, these guys were breaking things left and right. Whitman was unreadable at his time, So my point to you, actually, to answer the question of curriculum is, at the end of the day, if you're learning more about yourself, you're on the right track. But if you go through school for 12 years and don't know why you learned y equals mx plus b and don't care, something's wrong, right? Something's wrong. What's missing is a bridge between self-knowledge, self-learning, and a curriculum that teaches us that, right? And look, maybe we don't need to learn y equals mx plus b. Maybe a financial literacy would be more useful, right? Maybe we don't need to learn ancient poetry. Maybe you guys just really need to read your own writing and love it and read each other's writing, So is there room for adapting? Of course. But ultimately, the system we have is very new. The way school's supposed to work is like karate, like martial arts. You show up, right? And there's a master. And the master's job is to challenge you. It's not, a martial artist doesn't learn anything. The master doesn't teach you anything. He just puts you in positions where you're forced to learn in order to advance. He pairs you up with just the right adversary to kick your ass over and over and over until you learn to stand up to him. That's education. That's teaching. The closest thing to that model that I still see, that I would love to see, is actually the Islamic seminary, other than the temples of the Far East, right? Let's say a dojo, or a Buddhist temple, where you show up and say, I want to learn, and they say there's nothing to learn, and then you just sit there, and they prank you essentially for 15 years until you discover the secret of life. The Islamic seminary, especially the one in Najaf, where my father and my family come from, ultimately works like that. It's a city. There's nothing really there. It's just someone once described it to me, I've never been, but somebody once described Najaf to me as a dusty book, right? The old dusty book. Nothing really going on. But then you have these rooms where you go in and there's a man sitting there, and you sit down and there's other men and he's talking, and then somebody answers, and then somebody says something to challenge him, and then they're quoting books, and before you know it, somebody backs down and there's one man standing. And if that happens enough, people start going to that person and listening to them more and more and more and challenging them, right? And some people quit, man. Some people are like, I can't do this, and they leave. And others hold on real tight, And there is this agon contest, but the contest is not against each other. The contest is together toward the truth. Just imagine putting you guys and your best friends in a room and saying, we're gonna discover the meaning of life. What is life, right? We have until June to figure out what is life. Let's do it. That's school. That's what I want to do more of. And that's, I think, where the curriculum should come in. For example, that should be the question of mathematics. What is life according to mathematics? Let's start in kindergarten, and the first one to get to the end can leave. Speaking of another thing, this is another thing. Why do we organize kids by age? Like, okay, if you go to martial arts, you're not organized by age, you're organized by ability, right? Even in Arabic school, I remember age didn't matter. Within a 2 or 3 year range, whoever could read better was in the higher class. End of story. I wish we would get rid of that. I wish basically kids would show up freshmen. You take a test, you put them in a room, you find out, and now you have more variety and more quality because the agon, the contest, is increased because of the challenge of the question. But ultimately, man, I mean, as Wordman, right, my mission is to answer the 3 questions of life. Who are we? Why are we here? What does it mean to be human? Who are we? Why are we here? What does it mean to be human? If we can answer those questions in school, we're all set. We're all set. If you spend the rest of your life pursuing those questions, you will discover the meaning of life.
It's insane. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and pivot, focus a little bit more on storytelling. But I think we have a good idea of who Wordman is, and we'll go from there.
Perfect.